The nature of anger and the Stoic way to master it. Let's begin with a quiet but powerful truth. Anger isn't strength. It's the moment we lose our strength. It may feel empowering in the heat of the moment when we raise our voice, clench our fists, or deliver that perfectly timed comeback. But underneath the noise, anger is rarely about power. It's about losing our clarity, losing our peace, losing our ability to choose a wiser response. Now, this doesn't mean anger is bad. Anger is part of being human. It rises when we feel wronged, disrespected, unseen. It's the mind's way of saying something matters. But here's the Stoic perspective. Just because an emotion arises doesn't mean we have to obey it. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, they all believe that anger isn't a reflex we're stuck with. It's a habit we've learned, and anything learned can be unlearned. Think about that for a moment. What if anger isn't who you are, but simply a pattern you've carried? What if you could slowly retrain yourself, not to suppress anger, but to see it clearly and to respond with strength instead of reaction? That's exactly what this video is here to explore. You're about to learn 10 timeless Stoic strategies that will help you understand your anger, reduce its power over you, and eventually master it from within. Not through forced calm or fake positivity, but through a deeper awareness of how your mind works and how to reclaim your power without becoming cold, detached, or numb. Because true mastery is not about never feeling emotions. It's about not being ruled by them. In fact, one of the most powerful things Stoicism teaches is this. You are not at the mercy of your emotions. You are the architect of your response. You get to decide what anger means to you. You get to decide whether a comment ruins your day or becomes a moment of quiet inner strength. You get to choose even when it feels hard. And that's not just philosophy, that's emotional freedom. So if you've ever found yourself caught in the storm, saying things you didn't mean, regretting how you reacted, or feeling exhausted from carrying resentment, you're not alone. We've all been there. But the good news is there's a way out, not by becoming emotionless, but by becoming deeply centered. Anger loses its grip when you understand it, when you stop reacting blindly and start responding intentionally. This is what Stoic wisdom gives you, the calm between stimulus and response, the pause, the breath, the clarity, and clarity is where your strength lives. So take a moment, breathe, let go of the need to be perfect at this. You're not here to eliminate anger overnight. You're here to build something far more powerful: awareness, calm, and inner leadership. Let's begin this journey together, one Stoic lesson at a time. And we'll start with the first principle, a surprisingly simple shift that can quietly change how you experience conflict forever. Lesson 1. Recognize anger as weakness, not strength. Let's begin with a tough question. What if the anger we once thought made us powerful was actually the very thing that made us weaker? In the heat of the moment, anger can feel like fuel. It gives you that rush, that adrenaline spike. You speak louder, move faster, push harder, and to many that looks like strength, assertiveness, control. But let's take a deeper look, one that Marcus Aurelius himself offered nearly 2,000 years ago. He wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." To the Stoics, anger wasn't proof of power. It was proof you'd already lost it. Why? Because when you're angry, you're no longer anchored. You're no longer acting. You're reacting. And reactions born from rage are almost always clouded by ego, by fear, by the desire to hurt or defend, rather than to understand or solve. Now think about the people you truly admire. Not the loudest ones in the room, not the ones who explode when things don't go their way, but the ones who stay centered no matter the chaos. The ones who can sit in a storm and still speak with clarity, move with purpose, and choose their next step carefully. That is power. You see, anyone can lash out. It takes no discipline to explode. But to stay composed, that takes real inner work. Anger in its raw form is impulsive. It demands to be unleashed. It says, I deserve better, or they need to pay. It tries to convince you that yelling or slamming a door will fix a situation. But has it ever? How many times have you let anger take the lead, only to regret what came after? This is what the Stoics understood. When you give your anger the microphone, you hand over the steering wheel of your life. And yet society still rewards loudness. We call it passion. We call it leadership. But true leadership isn't loud. It's grounded. It's calm under pressure. It sees through the noise and says, I won't let this moment control me. A simple example. Imagine a heated meeting. One person starts shouting, defending their position with fire. Another listens, pauses, and responds with quiet precision, unshaken. Who do you trust more? Who would you follow? The louder one might get the spotlight, but the calm one moves the room. The real power doesn't lie in overpowering others. It lies in mastering yourself. And that mastery begins the moment you choose to see anger differently, not as a badge of honor, but as a sign that something within needs attention. Marcus Aurelius didn't pretend to never feel anger. In fact, he often wrote to himself about it, but instead of justifying it, he questioned it. He trained himself day by day to move away from impulse and toward intention. So here's a question we're sitting with. In your life, what would happen if you stopped seeing anger as strength and started seeing calm as your superpower? How would your relationships shift? How would your leadership evolve? How would your inner world feel if you no longer let every frustration turn into a fire? Let this be your first practice. Next time anger rises, don't judge it, but notice it. Ask, what would strength do right now? And more often than not, strength will choose silence over shouting, listening over lashing out, clarity over chaos. Over time, you don't just manage anger, you transcend it. You become the person who doesn't need to react to prove their worth. You become the person who chooses peace and holds it firmly. And that is when you stop being ruled by anger and begin to rise above it. Lesson 2, delay your reaction. Have you ever noticed how anger always wants you to act right now? It doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door open and demands attention. It whispers, say something, do something, now. And if you obey that impulse, chances are you'll say or do something you'll later wish you hadn't. Here's the quiet truth the Stoics discovered, and it's one of the most powerful tools for mastering anger. You don't have to react immediately. In fact, the more urgent your emotion feels, the more valuable it is to pause. Epictetus once advised, if someone irritates you, realize that it is your own opinion which has irritated you. Try, therefore, in the first place, not to be carried away by the impression. In simpler terms, don't trust your first emotional wave. Why? Because anger thrives on immediacy. It wants the heat of the moment. It wants the adrenaline. It wants to take over before your wiser self has a chance to speak. But what if you gave yourself just a little space? Imagine this. You receive a harsh email. The words sting. Your heart races. Your fingers itch to fire back something clever or cutting. But instead of typing, you close your laptop. You step outside. You breathe. You go for a short walk. By the time you return, the fire has cooled, and you see things more clearly. Maybe the message wasn't personal. Maybe the tone was off, but the intent wasn't malicious. Or maybe it was unkind. But now you have the clarity to respond with strength, not spite. That gap between stimulus and response is where your power lives. Think of it like this. Your mind has two rooms. One is loud, fast, emotional. That's where anger shows up. The other is quiet, patient, wise. That's where your calm lives. When you pause, you shift rooms. And sometimes all you need is a few deep breaths to make that shift. Sometimes a 5-minute walk. Sometimes just the question, do I need to respond to this at all? This isn't about suppressing anger. It's about giving it time to reveal what's beneath it. Because often, when we slow down, we discover that what we called anger was really hurt, or fear, or the pain of not feeling heard. And once you know what's truly there, you're no longer reacting, you're responding. Let me ask you, how many regrets in your life began with a moment you rushed to react? What if you had waited just a little longer? What if you had given your logic, not your ego, the microphone? There's a kind of dignity that comes with restraint, a quiet strength in not taking the bait. The Stoics weren't emotionless. They were emotionally disciplined. They knew that pausing isn't weakness, it's leadership of yourself. In today's world, we often feel pressure to reply instantly, to defend, explain, correct, but not every situation demands a rapid reply. In fact, the most effective communication often happens after the storm has passed inside you. So here's a gentle practice you can try this week. Whenever anger begins to rise, practice the pause. Don't speak, don't type, don't act, just notice, breathe, let the wave pass. And then when you do choose to act, let it come from clarity, not combustion. Over time, you'll notice something powerful. You start responding to life like a calm lake, not a boiling pot. People around you feel your steadiness. And more importantly, you feel it too. You become someone who doesn't need to rush to be heard. Because your presence speaks louder than your outbursts ever did. And that, my friend, is a strength that anger will never offer you. Lesson 3, separate what you can control. Let's pause for a moment and ask a question most of us rarely ask when we're upset. Is this truly within my control? It sounds simple, almost obvious. But in reality, most of our stress, our anger, and even our heartbreak comes from forgetting this one powerful truth. You cannot control what other people do. You can only control how you respond. This idea sits at the very heart of Stoic philosophy. Epictetus called it the dichotomy of control, and it might be the most emotionally liberating idea you ever come across. Here's how it works. There are two categories in life. 1, the things you can control, your actions, your words, your mindset. 2, and everything else, the weather, other people's choices, traffic, outcomes, opinions, timing, and the past. Most of our emotional suffering happens when we confuse the two. We try to control someone else's reaction. We try to change what's already happened. We obsess over outcomes we can't guarantee, and then we wonder why we feel so powerless. Have you ever caught yourself saying something like, I can't believe they did that to me. I wish they would just understand. Why won't they just listen? That frustration, it's born from resisting what isn't yours to control. But the moment you shift your focus back to your own thoughts, your own behavior, your own peace, you reclaim your power, not in a loud or forceful way, but in a quiet, centered way that says, this is outside of me. It does not deserve my inner peace. Let me give you a real-life example. Imagine you're stuck in traffic, running late, you're irritated, your heart races, you start blaming the city, the driver in front of you, even yourself. But then you remember the traffic isn't within your control. What is? Your breath, your tone when you call to let someone know you'll be late, your choice to stay calm or spiral. The Stoics believe that this kind of mental reframing, this steady separation between what's mine and what isn't, is where true freedom begins. Because once you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you can finally start focusing on what actually changes your life, your habits, your emotional discipline, your clarity of thought. Here's another way to think about it. Your peace is like a house, and not everything deserves a key. Just because something loud is banging on the door, someone's mood, an unfair comment, a setback, it doesn't mean you have to let it in. Instead, you can meet life at the door and say, "Not today. I'm choosing peace over chaos." This practice doesn't mean becoming passive. It means becoming intentional. It means spending your energy where it matters most, within. Because when you do that consistently, something shifts. You stop reacting to every trigger. You stop needing every situation to go your way. You stop trying to bend reality to fit your expectations. And instead, you move through the world with more grace, more strength, more peace. Let me ask you this. What are you carrying right now that isn't truly yours to carry? Whose choices are you trying to control? What outcomes are you trying to force? And what would happen, just imagine, if you gently put them down? Over time, practicing the Stoic dichotomy of control doesn't just help you avoid anger. It helps you build a quieter, more resilient form of confidence. Because you're no longer rattled by every storm. You've learned where to place your attention, and that wisdom becomes your anchor. So the next time life throws something chaotic your way, ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, let it pass like wind through an open window. And if the answer is yes, then respond like the person you're becoming. Calm, clear, and unshaken. Lesson 4. Assume ignorance, not malice. Have you ever been hurt by someone and immediately thought they did that on purpose? It's a natural reaction. When someone cuts us off, interrupts us, speaks harshly, or lets us down, we often assume the worst, that they meant to offend, that they were trying to disrespect us, that they knew exactly how much it would hurt. But what if that assumption is actually what's hurting us most? According to the Stoics, especially Seneca, most of the harm we experience from others isn't rooted in malice, but in ignorance. Not knowing better, not being aware, not having the tools to act differently. And that simple shift in perspective, it can completely transform how we carry pain and how we protect our peace. Seneca once wrote, "You must not hate those who do wrong. Pity them, for they are sick in mind, just as the ill are sick in body." It's easy to get angry when someone acts selfishly or cruelly, but the Stoic mind pauses and asks, what must this person be going through to act like this? What kind of pain or blindness are they operating from? Maybe they were raised in a home where love was conditional. Maybe they've never been taught to regulate their emotions. Maybe they're drowning in their own fears and don't even know it. None of this justifies bad behavior, but it helps you stop taking it personally. Let's take a simple example. You send someone a kind message and they leave you on read. You start overthinking, did I say something wrong? Or are they ignoring me on purpose? But what if they were overwhelmed with their own life? What if they never learned how to communicate well? What if it wasn't about you at all? Anger often builds on imagined motives. We create stories in our head about why someone did something, and then we suffer from the story, not just the act. Assuming malice keeps the fire alive, but assuming ignorance gives space for compassion. This doesn't mean you allow toxic behavior. Stoicism is not about being a doormat. It's about protecting your inner response, about not letting the chaos of others define the state of your mind. Because when you replace judgment with curiosity and outrage with empathy, something profound happens. Your heart stays open. Your clarity returns. Your peace remains intact. You begin to understand that not everyone has the same awareness or emotional maturity you do. And sometimes people hurt others because they're hurting silently themselves. And that in itself is tragic, not something to take as a personal attack. So the next time someone disappoints you, try asking, is this malice or just a lack of wisdom? Are they attacking me or simply unaware of their own impact? This mental pause doesn't just cool the fire of anger, it builds emotional maturity. It's an act of emotional leadership, and with enough practice, it becomes a quiet strength. Remember, as Marcus Aurelius taught, whenever someone does wrong, ask yourself, what mistake of theirs led them here? Once you understand that, you can respond with compassion instead of contempt. This doesn't mean staying in harmful situations, but it does mean walking away without hate in your heart. Because over time, assuming ignorance instead of malice doesn't just make you kinder, it makes you freer. Freer from resentment, freer from needless emotional burdens, freer to live with grace, even when others fall short. So here's the invitation. The next time anger rises, pause and reframe. Maybe they weren't trying to hurt you. Maybe they were simply unaware. And maybe that shift is the key to your peace. Lesson 5, don't take things personally. Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone's comment or behavior stuck with you long after it happened? Maybe they criticized your work, ignored your message, or looked at you in a way that just didn't feel right. And without even realizing it, you started carrying it, replaying it, wondering, was that about me? Did I do something wrong? This is one of the most common traps of the human mind, turning every external stimulus into something personal. But as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you don't have to turn this into something personal. No matter what happens, keep your inner citadel calm. Here's the truth. Most of what people say and do is a reflection of them, not you. Their stress, their beliefs, their wounds, their unresolved issues. And yet, we internalize it as if the entire world is giving us a performance review. Why? Because the ego craves validation and dreads rejection. It wants to be seen, affirmed, and understood. So when we feel dismissed, overlooked, or criticized, it takes it personally. But what if we didn't? What if we could see an insult? It's just noise in the wind? Imagine someone walking by you on a windy day, muttering under their breath. Would you chase the wind? Try to bottle it up? No, you'd let it pass and keep walking. The Stoic mind is like that. It learns not to let every word, look, or silence penetrate the soul. This isn't about being indifferent. It's about being internally free. It's about learning to detach your sense of worth from the reactions of others. Because when your peace depends on how people treat you, you're always at their mercy. But when you build that peace from within, anchored in your own values, clarity, and intention, then no one's opinion has the power to shake your foundation. Let's be real. You're going to be misunderstood sometimes, misjudged, ignored, misinterpreted. It's part of being human, The question is, will you take every one of those moments personally, or will you learn to let it go? This is emotional discipline. This is inner strength. The next time someone criticizes you unfairly or acts coldly, try this mental shift. Instead of asking, why are they treating me this way? Ask, what must they be going through? Is this really about me or just something they're projecting? And then breathe. Let the moment pass. Return to your center. Because not every insult deserves your energy. Not every opinion needs your attention. And not every action is worth your emotional investment. Some things are best left in the wind. Over time, when you stop taking things personally, you stop being pulled in every direction. You become steady, unshakable. And from that calm center, you can live more clearly, more compassionately, and more courageously. Remember, your peace is too precious to hand over to every passing mood of the world. Hold it close, protect it like sacred ground, and walk forward, light and unburdened. Lesson 6, expect obstacles and be prepared. Here's something many of us forget in our pursuit of peace. Life will interrupt you. People will be rude. Plans will fall apart. Something or someone will always show up to test your patience. And yet we still act surprised, as if the world owes us smooth roads and perfect timing. But the Stoics approached life with a very different mindset. They didn't just hope for calm, they trained for chaos. One of their most powerful tools was something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. It's the practice of visualizing what could go wrong, not to become anxious, but to become ready. Seneca once wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." In other words, if you expect the obstacle, you won't be shaken by it. Let's make it real. Imagine you're going into a meeting where you know someone tends to be dismissive. If you walk in expecting kindness, you might get upset by their coldness. But if you've mentally prepared, if you've reminded yourself, this person may be rude and that's okay, you remain anchored. Your peace doesn't break. Your center holds. This is not pessimism. It's mental armor. It's the quiet practice of preparing your inner world for the unpredictability of the outer world. When you expect rain, you carry a coat. When you expect difficulty, you carry discipline. Marcus Aurelius used this approach every morning. He would remind himself, today I may meet people who are inconsiderate, ungrateful, or selfish. Not to judge them, but so he wouldn't be shocked by them. And that's the point. Surprise is often what fuels anger. It's not just what happens. It's the unexpected nature of it that throws us off. So what if you stop being surprised? What if you began your day asking, what challenges might I face today? And how can I prepare my mind to meet them with grace? This simple question shifts everything. It turns you from a reactor into a responder, from someone tossed by life into someone who navigates it with purpose. You begin to see obstacles not as punishments, but as part of the design, not disruptions, but training grounds. And once you adopt that lens, you stop clinging to control. You start adapting with strength. You start flowing forward with clarity. So the next time something or someone catches you off guard, pause, ask yourself, did I really expect life to be obstacle-free? And then remind yourself, the obstacle is not a surprise. It's part of the plan. Over time, this mindset builds more than just peace. It builds emotional agility, resilience, maturity, wisdom. Because when you stop fighting the fact that life is imperfect, you become someone who can handle anything with calm and with heart. Lesson 7. Train yourself through small discomforts. What if emotional strength isn't built in the storm, but in the quiet hours before it? You don't become resilient only by reacting well to chaos. You become resilient by training for it, daily, silently, even when no one's watching. This is one of the deepest secrets of Stoic practice. Strength is not a gift, it's a discipline, and it's built in small, voluntary discomforts. The Stoics had a phrase for this: voluntary hardship. They would sleep on the floor, wear plain clothes, fast for a day, not because they had to, but because they chose to. Why? Because when you practice being slightly uncomfortable by choice, the world's discomforts lose their sting. A cold shower, a delayed cup of coffee, the act of sitting still with an itch instead of scratching it. These aren't acts of punishment. They're micro rehearsals for the moments in life that will ask more of you. And make no mistake, those moments will come. You'll be cut off in traffic, ignored by someone you care about, overwhelmed at work, or rejected unexpectedly. The untrained mind explodes, but the trained mind stays still, not because it doesn't feel, but because it has practiced not reacting. Just like a muscle is built through resistance, emotional calm is built through chosen friction. Let's say you practice patience when someone interrupts you, just for 10 seconds longer than usual. That moment may seem small, but it's a representative, a mental push-up. Over time, those reps turn into real strength. You begin to separate feeling from reaction. You learn how to sit with discomfort instead of needing to escape it, and suddenly, the little things stop breaking you. You stop being ruled by every inconvenience, every rude comment, every slow line at the grocery store, because you've trained your nervous system to stay grounded. You've taught your mind, we don't need to panic here. We've been here before. It's not about becoming numb. It's about becoming capable of facing life's edges without losing your center, capable of meeting pressure without collapsing into anger or chaos. This is emotional discipline in action, not in theory, and it's something anyone can build, starting today. So ask yourself, what small discomfort can I choose today, not to punish myself, but to prepare myself? Because over time, these tiny voluntary hardships become the scaffolding of a calmer, wiser, more resilient you. And one day, when the real storm comes, you'll realize you've already trained for this. Lesson 8. Channel anger into constructive action. Let me ask you something. What if your anger wasn't something to suppress, but something to redirect? You see, anger by itself isn't the enemy. It's just energy, raw, powerful, and intense. It's what we do with that energy that defines whether it becomes destructive or transformational. In Stoic philosophy, the goal was never to pretend you don't feel anything. The Stoics were human too. They felt anger, frustration, betrayal, but they trained themselves to pause, observe, and choose where that fire would go. Because anger, when left unchecked, burns bridges. But when redirected with purpose, it can build something better. Think of anger like fire. Left wild, it scorches everything in its path. But when you contain it, when you focus it, it becomes heat, power, fuel. So next time you feel that familiar tightness in your chest, that rush of heat in your body, ask yourself a different kind of question. How can I use this energy to create instead of destroy? Let's say someone disrespected you in a meeting. Your instinct might be to react, to cut them down, to defend your pride. But what if you took that surge of emotion and channeled it into something stronger? Write it out. Go for a run. Start building the very thing they said you couldn't do. Let their words become the spark, not for revenge, but for focused, meaningful action. Epictetus once said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. But when you direct that anger, when you transform it into discipline and direction, you reclaim your power." Here's a practical example. If you're angry about something at work, maybe a decision that undermines your effort, ask on what's within my control right now. Where can I turn this fire into a solution, a boundary, or a quiet but powerful response? Maybe you don't need to argue. Maybe you need to clarify your priorities. Or take the energy of that frustration and pour it into a project that speaks louder than any debate ever could. Because you don't have to explode to be heard. You don't have to fight to prove your strength. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do with your anger is turn it into silence that moves mountains. Here's the deeper truth. Underneath most anger is a buried desire, something you care about that feels threatened. Maybe it's your sense of fairness. Maybe it's your boundaries. Maybe it's your longing to be seen or respected. So the next time you feel anger rising, ask, what is this really about? What value of mine feels compromised? What would a wise version of me do with this energy? Because the goal isn't to be cold or emotionless, it's to become clearer, to move with intention, not reaction. You can still feel everything and choose something better. That's emotional discipline. That's real strength. That's stoicism in action. So today, when something or someone sparks that familiar frustration, don't suppress it, but don't explode either. Redirect it, shape it, turn the heat into clarity, and the frustration into forward motion. Because anger, when mastered, becomes more than just a feeling. It becomes a force. And in the hands of someone calm, clear, and deliberate, that force doesn't just change your life, it builds it. Lesson 9. Walk away without needing to win. Let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself stuck in an argument, not because it mattered, but because you didn't want to lose? We've all been there. Someone says something offensive, dismissive, or just plain wrong, and suddenly something inside you tightens. Your ego whispers, say something back. Don't let them win. But here's what the Stoics understood, something that took me years to fully grasp. Not every battle is worth fighting, and not every win is worth the cost of your inner peace. The desire to win, to prove yourself, to get the last word, it's almost always driven by ego. But ego is noisy. Ego is reactive. Ego confuses momentary validation with long-term strength. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to lose your inner peace over trivial matters." And when you think about it, what are most arguments really about? Not truth, not justice, but being right, being seen, being acknowledged. The problem is, in trying to win the argument, we often lose something far more valuable: our center, our clarity, our time, our presence. Let me share a little truth that changed my life. You don't always have to win to walk away strong. Sometimes the quietest exit is the loudest power move. Walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's knowing that someone else's misunderstanding or disrespect doesn't deserve a permanent place in your nervous system. It's remembering that peace is more valuable than pride. Here's a scenario. Someone criticizes your decision publicly. Your heart races. You're tempted to snap back. But what if, just what if, you didn't respond? What if you smiled, nodded, and let it be? What if you trusted that your self-worth isn't measured by someone else's applause or approval? What if you realize that sometimes silence is the ultimate rebuttal? Because when you don't react, you signal something rare: emotional maturity. And that energy, It's magnetic. You show others and yourself that your dignity is not up for negotiation, that you're not here to argue, but to evolve. Let's be honest. Winning the argument may give you a moment of triumph, but is it worth the lingering stress, the elevated heart rate, the hours of overthinking, the mental replay that follows you home? Most of the time, it's not. Walking away may not give you the satisfaction of a verbal victory, but it gives you something deeper: peace, space, freedom. The world tells you to clap back, prove your point, dominate, but the Stoics offer a different invitation. Choose stillness over noise. Choose presence over performance. Choose the higher ground, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. So the next time you're drawn into a pointless debate, a petty insult, or an emotional trap, pause. Ask yourself, is this really worth it? Or is my ego just hungry for a win? And if the answer is no, then walk away. Not because you've lost, but because you've outgrown the need to win. Lesson 10. Practice inner stillness. Daily anger doesn't just show up out of nowhere. It builds quietly, slowly, through overstimulation, exhaustion, noise, and emotional clutter. And unless you have a space inside you that is calm and grounded, anger finds easy access. That's why one of the most powerful Stoic disciplines is not an outward behavior, but an inward state: stillness. Inner stillness isn't passive. It's not about doing nothing. It's about creating a steady center, an emotional refuge that protects you from being hijacked by every trigger or conflict. The modern world is not built for stillness. It rushes, it notifies, it provokes. Every ping, every headline, every traffic jam can pull you further from your center if you let it. But here's the truth. Calm is a daily decision, and like any form of strength, it must be trained. The Stoics didn't wake up calm, they practiced it. Marcus Aurelius rose early to write in his journal, not because he wanted to be poetic, but because he needed to remind himself of who he wanted to be that day. Epictetus reminded his students, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And mastery begins in silence. So what does that look like in your real life? It could be 10 minutes in the morning, no phone, no news, just your breath and your awareness. You can sit in silence. Write down your intentions. Breathe, feel, listen. Stillness is not about escaping life. It's about meeting it differently. You start your day from within, not from reaction. You center yourself before the world tries to scatter you. And here's where it matters most. When anger shows up, when someone cuts you off, insults you, dismisses you, you have a space between the stimulus and your response. That space, that's where wisdom lives. If you don't create that space daily, the world will fill it for you with tension, distractions, and emotional noise. But when you guard that space, it becomes your sanctuary, your reset, your strength. Ryan Holiday said it well. Stillness is the key, not just to peace, but to clarity, perspective, and emotional freedom. When you're still, you no longer respond from fear or pride. You respond from depth. And that's when your actions start to carry more weight, not because you're louder, but because you're rooted. So let me ask you this. What would your life feel like if every day you gave yourself even just 10 minutes of intentional stillness? How would your conversations shift? How would your energy feel? How much more of your peace could you protect simply by beginning within? It doesn't require perfection, just presence, just the willingness to pause, listen, and reconnect with the part of you that doesn't need to prove anything. The more you practice stillness, the less anger has a place to grow. Because your peace is no longer dependent on the world behaving a certain way. It's something you carry with you, silently, firmly, unshakably. And that's where we close, on a truth that sounds simple, yet holds the deepest power. You are not your anger. You are the calm beneath it. And that calm is something you can cultivate day by day, breath by breath. So start tomorrow. Or better yet, start right now. Close your eyes, breathe, return to yourself. Stillness is not just the end of anger. It's the beginning of everything real. You are the master of your reaction. Let's pause here for a moment, not to end the conversation, but to let it sink in. We've explored how anger isn't always the real enemy. The real danger is what happens when we don't notice we're angry, when we react without awareness, without clarity, without intention. That's when anger takes control. That's when we lose ourselves. But here's the truth Stoicism has whispered across centuries. You are not powerless. Anger doesn't control you unless you hand over the keys. You are the gatekeeper of your own mind. And with each practice, each pause, each time you choose reflection over reactivity, you reclaim your inner ground. Think about that. Every time you don't snap back, don't take the bait. Don't let the chaos dictate your mood. You are building something stronger than control. You are building mastery, not mastery over others, mastery over yourself. That's what the Stoics were trying to tell us all along. Marcus Aurelius didn't avoid conflict by luck. He practiced restraint like it was a sacred ritual. Epictetus taught that freedom is the only worthy goal in life. But he wasn't talking about external freedom. He meant freedom from inner turmoil. And Seneca reminded us that anger is a kind of temporary madness, one we can gently train ourselves to avoid. So the real power isn't in never feeling anger. The power lies in noticing it, naming it, and choosing your next move. Let me ask you, what would your life look like if you gave yourself that pause before reacting? How many arguments would you avoid? How much peace would you preserve? You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be unshakable. You just need to remember this simple truth. You can't control everything, but you can master yourself. And that's enough. That's more than enough to change your day, your energy, your relationships, quietly and completely. So the next time the fire rises, pause, take a breath, come back to yourself. Because your strength isn't in how loud you speak. It's in how calmly you lead your own mind. And maybe, just maybe, that's what real freedom feels like.